All right. Good morning, and welcome to Mystical Teachings from the Tanya. Rabbi Ronnie Fine coming to you from Chabad Zich and Kadesh in Montreal, Canada. It was a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. We welcome, as we do all the time, welcoming Joe. Boker Tov. Joe, you have to remind me from where you are, because I don't remember. TJ, that I do remember. Australia. Erev Tov, you're up late. Anna in Hungary, good afternoon to you. And who else? Erica in Norway, and a good afternoon to you too. Eugene in Calgary, good morning. And Sylvia from New York is with us, or did she make it back to Montreal? Sylvia, let me know. Welcome. Waiting for your arrival here in Montreal. Back. John, North Carolina. Good morning. Clem in Brisbane, where it is also very late. Angie in Phoenix, good morning. Susan in Scranton, welcome. Michael in Germany, good afternoon to you. Kathy, good day. Sheila from Cleveland, shalom. Tim is with us in Texas. Shimon from Fort Lauderdale, shalom. Stan, good afternoon to you in London, England. Art in Michigan. Denise and Linda, twins, had their birthday yesterday, their Jewish birthday. Again, a mazel tov. Michael in Virginia, Boker Tov. Kathy in Lake City, Florida is with us. Chris in Mexico, shalom. Robert in Boston. Rena is with us from Colorado. Janie from Ohio, welcome. Joe, okay, Middleburg, Florida. Okay, gotta remember that. Oh, all right. Which son is a good friend of your rabbi in Clay County? Wonderful. Beautiful. David and Batya, welcome in Montreal. Molly, hello. And from Jennifer from Austin, Texas. Good morning. Rick. All right, Crystal Lake, Illinois with us. Molly's birthday is tomorrow. Okay, so first of all, an early mazel tov, and tomorrow again. And Sarah Malka from North Carolina is with us. Welcome. In Germany, we have Stephanie with us. Molly is in Cape Town. Okay. Daisy in Yerushalayim in the holy city of Israel. And Erica's birthday is in 2 days. Okay, whoa, we have a lot to celebrate here. And Sheila, your birthday also. Okay, you have to tell me on the day, so we will also, dedicate learning in your honor. All right, folks. We continue in the 37th chapter of Tanya, where we're speaking about Maseinu, our actions. It's up to us. We create our destiny. And the ultimate destiny of changing the world for good, redemption, Mashiach. A world that the Ein Sof light of God is the obvious reality. Right now, in our neshama, in our soul, our mind's eye. But then it'll be through our actions, what we do now will transform the world, and it'll become a world truly of good. How do we do that? So we explained yesterday. It's through the mitzvah. The word mitzvah, people mistake to think is a good deed merely. It is much more than that. But it's also, it's a commandment, of course, but it's even more than that. It's a connection. Connection to God that we make, and through that connection we bring the light of God into this world. That's the power of the mitzvah. And we transform the world. We transform the object of the mitzvah, right? The object of the mitzvah, like tefillin, that is, before it was used, it was a hide of an animal, and now it's now tefillin, mezuzah, a Torah scroll. It's a holy object. So we've transformed that element of the world. But we've also transformed ourselves. And that's ultimately what we need to do, is a world that the light of God is concealed. We need to transform it. So we transform it through the mitzvah. And we transform ourselves in that act of the mitzvah. As we explained, because the animal soul is vitality from klipa. Klipa is a shell that covers over on the presence of God. The animal soul, its reality is it's selfhood, not godhood. We got to transform that. Through the act of the mitzvah, we do that, as we explained at great length previously. Okay, that's makes sense, perfectly reasonable. How do we make that transformation of an entire world? We're talking about just mitzvah objects and us as a person that we're transforming. There's a whole world out there that needs to be transformed. God wants a dwelling place in the entire low world, the physical world. Well, the physical world isn't just mitzvah objects and me and you. There's a lot of other physicality out there that needs to be transformed. So how is that going to happen? So this is where we're going, and this will explain us today the Kabbalah of food. What is the true idea of food? So we think food, on a elevated level, is something that, of course, nourishes me, gives me strength, that I can do good, right? Then that's a means to an end. And there's a truth to that, but there's a deeper truth than merely food is what gives me strength that I could now serve God and I could do good. It's deeper than that. Let's explain it. We're learning right now. I ate something before, food. And yes, that food it does give me vitality, it gives me energy. But it's much more than it just gives me energy. It's actually now that the energy of the food is clothed in the mitzvah itself. How so? Is because the food becomes my vitality, becomes my flesh and blood. It becomes the blood, right, which is klipas noiga. Klipas noiga is the admixture of good and bad, vitality that's good and bad. So the food that I ingest, kosher food of course, that I ingest becomes my blood, and that blood, right, that became from the food and drink, is now giving vitality to my mitzvah that I am doing. So really what I'm doing is not just elevating, I'm not just doing a mitzvah with a material object in this world that has been brought into from klipa, hide of an animal, right? Now elevated. But the energy that I have to be able to do that has also been elevated to holiness. It's also been elevated as a result and absorbed because it's giving energy to my animal soul. That is the animal soul that is capable of engaging and doing the good deed. So the food that we drink and eat is not figuratively just giving me strength. Well, not, I mean, literally giving me strength, but it's more than just giving me strength that I could do good and change the world for good, but it itself is being absorbed into the divine. That's what's happening. Now, let's understand more clearly this concept. Well, hello, Vilna, and welcome. Let's understand this concept a little more clearly. You know, we've mentioned this idea many times, but it's a very powerful idea that we need to appreciate. And that is that there isn't two power centers, the godhood and the anti-god, Satan. Right? And they're vying for power. You know, light versus darkness, good versus evil, and so on. And that's, you know, how the world is portrayed. That's how we understand the world. And, you know, from our perspective, can very well be seen that way, but it isn't in truth that way. In truth, there's only God. God is the only reality. Now, from God, he contracts the divine light in such a manner that it's so diminished that we don't see the presence of God. That's klipa. That's the shell that covers over on the presence of God. In that klipa, there's two types of vitality. There's two types. There is the klipa that we're talking about over here, as in food, kosher food, or, you know, organic food, right? That's natural. Let's use that, or kosher food if it's processed. Is it a mitzvah object? No. Is it sanctified inherently? The presence of God is there? No. Is God's vitality there? Is God's realness there? Absolutely. But it's hidden. That's the shell that covers over on it. Now, beyond that, there's also three completely unholy forms of vitality. Shalish klipas etzmeis, as it's called, that real evil comes from there. So the klipas nega is an admixture. It could be debased or it could be uplifted. How's it uplifted? Again, when we eat food, for example, and now we study Tanya as we're doing, or we pray, or we do an act of loving kindness, that food and drink became my blood, that blood is carrying and giving vitality through my animal soul to give my physical body the capability of doing the act of the mitzvah. So not only am I elevated in the act of doing good and bound up and one with the divine, but the food itself is likewise. The food itself is likewise. When you think about that, it's unbelievable. So the food doesn't become merely a means to an end. On one level it is. Let's not fool ourselves. Of course it is. Right? On this level that we're talking about, it's a means to an end. It's giving you strength. But on a deeper level, it's an end in itself. Because it's giving me that vitality to do the good, it itself, the engagement with the food, becomes an exalted and divine, being absorbed in the divine. It's literally being absorbed in the divine. In that act, that's a very powerful idea. And when we're mindful of that, it's just as a side point over here, this is really, I think, an important point. We all struggle with food on some level. On some level, we all struggle with food. When you think about it, as a child, and you want to raise a child properly, where is the first area that you can kind of create boundaries and appropriate behavior with an association and engagement with is food. The kid throws the food off the tray, and all kind of things that we need to be able to train the child appropriately, to engage appropriately with food. Food is so much a part of our lives. And here, the notion that we're learning and understanding over here as adults is that this can be truly an elevated and absorbed in divine when we have this notion. Now, to take this notion further, to take this thought further, the entire Jewish people are a 600,000 kind of branches of the Jewish people. And from those branches, you have twigs. From those twigs, you have leaves. Right? And each soul is is a leaf, so to speak, metaphorically speaking. So these 600,000 general souls, which is, by the way, based on the idea of the 600,000 that left Egypt. So those 600,000 general souls need to fulfill, as something we learned earlier, the 613 commandments. Now, of those commandments, we have prohibitions, negative commandments to stay away from, and positive commandments that we need to fulfill. So the 365 negative commandments, the prohibitions of, thou shalt not, right, the don'ts, they are metaphorically like 365 blood vessels of the animal soul in the body. What does that mean? So it's amazing, God forbid there's disease in physical disease in the bloodstream, right? That you can have, and what does that mean? God forbid, it can be obviously fatal. It can be a virus, that's in the blood and this and that, whatever. But it can be fatal, and that means because it's not pure, the blood. Well, the same thing is over here. This is a metaphor, is that these 365 prohibitions are, why are they a prohibition? Why are they something to stay away? Because engaging in them brings a negative vitality, as, if you were brought to the bloodstream, something that would be toxic. So therefore we need to stay away from it in order that it shouldn't bring anything spiritually unhealthy to my vitality, to my life, right? Ultimately, all of this will be destroy the negativity when Hashem will banish the spirit of impurity from the world, and that is, a world of good, a redeemed world, a Mashiach. But right now, the totality of the general souls stay away from that, from drawing down a negative life force into our physical body, animal soul, and godly soul. We remove it, right? And at the same time, we also need to do that. That's sort of holding off at bay the negative forces that should not bring anything negative to me. But that's not sufficient. We still also need to transform me and the world that I engage in, and in particular the food and drink that I engage in, right, that we're speaking about over here. How do I do that? That's the 248 positive commandments that are represented by 248 limbs of the body, that when I engage in all of those mitzvahs, I create now a perfect unity with God in the fulfillment of each act of a mitzvah. And again, what's important over here is that there's me being united and bound up with God in the act of the mitzvah, staying away from negative forces of the 365 prohibitions, that it shouldn't bring a negative vitality into my being. And that is, of course, key, but that's not sufficient to transform the world. That's transforming me. But everything of me that's being transformed is through engaging the act of the mitzvah with something outside of me. It's a physical object that I use, that physical object is a mitzvah object. Again, my mezuzah, tefillin, as we've given the example. And, or prayer, or learning Torah right now. We're learning Torah, so we're engaging I'm engaging my mouth through verbalizing, so there's a physical reality in my engagement. Otherwise, if it was just, thoughts and understanding, there'd be more of the spirit. But there's a physical aspect to it. And all of that is predicated on food and drink. The food and drink that becomes my blood, my lifeline, the force that gives me the capability of now saying words of Torah, saying words of prayer, being able to move my arm to stretch it out and care for another, give tzedakah, give charity, be there for another. Stretch my arm and put on tefillin, whatever the mitzvah would be. And through this, slowly but surely, we transform ourselves, the object of the mitzvah, and all of the things that I needed to use in order to fulfill the mitzvah. Let's take it even a step further. Now with COVID, so it's a bit of a challenge, and to go visit someone in the hospital. And there's still a mitzvah to go visit someone in the hospital, if you can. Sometimes it might be a mitzvah to stay away because of the COVID issue, but if we can. So, driving your car now becomes a means that you can now fulfill a mitzvah of visiting someone in the hospital. Filling up your car, the tank, becomes now a mitzvah. It doesn't become a mitzvah. I'm sorry. It enables me to fulfill the mitzvah. So there's, in the act itself, it is also ultimately absorbed in the divine, which is an amazing idea. But right now, there'll be more about that tomorrow. Right now, we're speaking about the Kabbalah of Food and how food and drink are not just a means to an end, but they also serve as an end in itself, because in the engagement, it's absorbed in the divine because it enables us to be able to do a mitzvah. When we're mindful of that, in this day and age, there's so many diets out there, so many people who are concerned with weight, they're concerned with body image, they're concerned with so many things. I would suggest that this might be actually a healthier beginning point. The healthier beginning point is, how do I view food? How do I look at it? Now, I'll be quite honest, I enjoy eating food like I'm sure all of us do. That's okay. But if it becomes a pure act of enjoyment, of pleasure, then it's going to be mastering us. We're going to be out of control. It's going to control us. If we have this mindset about food, this appreciation of what food is, then it will give us the capability to be master over it, and that it can be then truly a vitality that's going to give us what we need in order to not just transform me, but change the world for good, and be that next step to Mashiach. So I hope there's clarity there. Anybody have questions? Or as we like to end, I know now that. Who can share with me? Vilma, do you have any questions? Does anybody here have any questions, any comments? John says, food transformed to energy in our blood to do a mitzvah, which is the will of God, causes the klipa to be absorbed in divine light through the elevation of the animal soul that is nourished by the blood. Very good. Excellent. Wow. Excellent. Lisa. I know now that keeping kosher, I am giving vitality to my mitzvahs by feeding my animal soul and giving it the energy it needs to follow through the mitzvah, raising it to the divine level. Excellent. Batya, who is a foodologist. I don't know if that's a right word at all, but, you know. First thing is, that we understand that we are aware why we are eating any particular food and the level we're receiving vitality from food, right? Yeah. If we have that notion that the food I'm eating is a vitality that is absorbed in the divine, it's, wow, powerful. Powerful mindfulness and engagement in food, and will give us a healthy way to deal with food. And, you know, I don't know, North America, I don't know, the obesity level is, I think it's the highest it's ever been, and it's terrible. And, you know, dieting is not the answer. Healthy foods is not the answer. Not to suggest that there isn't value in it. It's not the answer. It is a healthy relationship with food that is the beginning. You know, you might still need to diet, and you might need, you know, cut out some sugar and or whatever, right? But the main thing is our understanding, our appreciation, our perspective on food and how we engage it. All right. All right, folks. Beautiful. So Ricky is asking, do we have kavana intent? I think it's an awareness that we need to have. We learn about this, and we, what we just learned, and, you know, we think about it. It becomes a part of us, this truth that we just learned, that when we engage in food, we'll engage a little differently. Well, we were still attracted to the food. You know, we're not going to be righteous and, you know, not be attracted to the food and taste the, you know, the various tasty flavors that there is in the food that we're eating, and enjoy that, and, you know, enjoy being satiated and so on and so forth. I'm not going there right now. That's a different notion, and that's not the point here. So the point is the awareness of this is the ultimate of food. Beautiful. My wife, when she goes shopping, sometimes, you know, when she's picking out something, apples, you know, and she's making apple pie for Shabbos or whatever the case may be, or something else, you know, sweet potatoes, that she's making sweet potato pie for Shabbos. And she said, oh, this one, lucky, it's going to be part of our Shabbos meal. It's going to be elevated and part of a divine connection. All right, folks. Wonderful. Sharing's caring. A reminder that 12 o'clock noon, we have our myeshiva.ca on Zoom and on Facebook, on Chabad Zichra and ZK Facebook page. And I'm at 12:45 to 1:30, Tuesday through Friday. Not today. I won't be there today, but you can always join Rabbi Mendy. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you for Chabad Zichron Kadesh in Montreal, Canada, where it's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you the Tanya. Have a wonderful day. Oh.